Now, talking real estate.
Now, of course, the term underquoting stirs a fair bit of annoyance, doesn't it, amongst home buyers who find themselves attending auctions where properties sell for much more than expected. New underquoting laws applied to the sale of residential property from January 1 back in 2016 to give clearer rules for agents around the quoting of property prices. But despite it being illegal, suggestions are it continues, and it's not just continuing, it might well be getting worse. Now, according to Peter O'Malley from Harris Partners, who will join me in a second, maybe 5, 20% is the new 10% when it comes to underquoting. It was 7. Peter O'Malley from Harris Partners.
Good morning, Luke. Great
Nice
to be with
see you. You well?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Busy day today?
Very busy, yes.
Okay.
Saturday's always a good day out in the field.
Of course. Thank you for coming in. 20% the new 10%. Is that?
It shouldn't be that way, but it is,
shouldn't
Luke.
Be. Yeah.
And what's happening here is that in every marketplace, it only takes one agency to adopt this strategy and make the vendor a willing participant in it, and then the other agent's listings suddenly look overpriced relative to the property that's being underquoted by 20%, so they're forced inadvertently to follow suit. Right. And that's what's happening right across the city. It's not a regional thing. Buyers agents have said to me that they're regularly seeing properties pass in well above 10% from what the agent's guide was, which is the clearest sign that it's an underquoted property.
How do we get something with a bit more meaning going on here? The agent's guide. I mean, I know it's a marketplace, and so things will fluctuate. Are there things we can do that we're not doing?
I believe there certainly are.
Okay, tell me.
The first is, when we look at the stamping out of dummy bidding, vendors could face a fine as well as the real estate agent if they were shown to be partaking in dummy bidding.
Right.
But when it comes to underquoting, there's no such penalties in place for vendors. So real estate agents, by fudging the paperwork, are making vendors willing participants in the underquoting, and they're all cleaning it up on the paperwork. The people that are investigating these instances are not trained well enough in the real estate field to know what an underquote is and what isn't. That's unfortunate, but like most government departments, they're stretched pretty thinly at the moment.
So is it that they're stretched, or they're not really real estate market aware? You know, they're not an agent, former agent, or someone that works in an agency.
That's right. They're just not real estate aware enough.
Right, okay.
So I think, and I have thought about the question you've just asked, Luke, I think the one that ices it is if every property that passes in by more than 10% above the agent's reserve should be investigated automatically. And the agent and the vendor should be on the hook to explain, why did this property pass in for more than 10% above the price guide during the advertising campaign? That there would flush out whether it was an underquote, or the vendors do blindside real estate agents on the morning of the auction by having an unrealistically high reserve or a change in motivation.
Tell me what that is. How does that look like? You get a phone call, do you? Or
you have to have a written letter that goes to the auctioneer before the auction commences, stating the vendor's reserve. And many agents will attest that they have been blindsided, and I accept that happens in the marketplace.
On the day or the day before, I would now want the reserve, an extra $100,000 higher.
That's right.
Right.
There, and that can clean bowl the campaign and mess it all up. But that's the minority of instances. Right. It takes $10,000 to $12,000 in marketing and probably another $10,000 in styling and preparation costs to be on the market. So on auction day, vendors want it to be a success. They don't want it to pass in. So if it passes in by more than 10% than what the real estate agent told the buyers for the previous 4 weeks, there has to be questions asked and penalties apply where underquoting is evidently occurred.
Yeah. So again, that would be something supported by the majority of agents, do you think? I mean, is it driving people nuts that much that this needs to be stamped out and quickly?
It is. It's driving buyers, sellers and agents nuts. It only takes one firm in a respective marketplace to start underquoting by 20%, and it rips through the marketplace like a bushfire.
Right.
So there's a lot of agents that don't like standing at a front door on a Saturday morning telling people they can buy a $2 million house for 1.6.
Yeah.
But by the same token, if they stand at the front door telling people this is for sale for around $2 million and a comparable home down the road is being marketed for 1.6, where do you think the buyers are going to go?
Of course.
That's the problem, why it needs to be cleaned up. We have to accept that the laws that were introduced in 2016, as you've just said, have not worked.
Are there serial offenders, without naming anyone? Do you see when something is put on the market and you can see who the agent is? Do you automatically is it that rife that you can tell if it goes to agent ABC?
In the markets that I operate in, you know who will underquote by 15 to 25%.
Seriously?
Yeah.
It's that well known.
So I've had a client that made a bid of 1.9 million at an auction a few weeks ago. The price guide during the auction was 1.9 million. He offered the price guide that the agent had quoted to every buyer for 4 weeks. In the auction, he said, "We're not taking bids under 2 million." The property passed in, and he was told at that point the reserve was 2.4. That is what's going on out at auctions in Sydney at the moment. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh. What's the market like?
It's good. It's you need to have your property presented correctly. I think
What does that mean?
You just can't put a property on the market without having the styling right, the maintenance done. The market is punishing anything at the moment that is not on point. So there's a flight to quality. There's buyers in the marketplace.
Okay.
Baby boomers downsizing and international buyers coming in on the weak Australian dollar are pretty formidable bidders in the marketplace at the moment. So we've had 14 interest rate rises. Everyone knows that. But 4 of those 14 were double. They were 0.5% increases in 2022. So we've had the equivalent of 18 interest rate rises in the last 2 years, Luke.
Yeah.
And the property market is still edging up.
Yeah.
The rate of growth in 2024 has slowed from what was happening in 2023. But I think given what the market has faced, the market's in pretty good nick.
So the international buyers, you and I had this conversation many years ago, I remember, and you said at the time, if I remember correctly, that they were a major influence in the marketplace. Are they still? Because the government, a week or two back was saying we're going to make it much harder. They're going to up taxes or fees or whatever it might be.
Yeah, well, up until that hits the marketplace, international buyers are playing a big role. When we spoke about it a few years ago, Luke, international buyers, or the phrase international buyers, was code for Chinese. Let's be honest.
Spot on.
That is not the case anymore. Vietnamese buyers, people who might be earning American dollars or coming from America, the Great British Pounds. There's many currencies that have performed particularly strongly against the Aussie dollar.
Yep.
And the other thing about this immigration surge that we're experiencing, they're after skilled migrants. Yeah. So skilled migrants means people coming in with money against a weak Australian dollar.
Yeah.
And they're getting here, and Australian real estate is not expensive to them. It's highly affordable.
Right.
Hence, they're such a formidable force in the marketplace.
Yeah. And in relation to the rental market, I think we were talking off air, you were saying winter's not a good time to have your property vacant, but it seems with a huge population growth and not a lot of new supply, renters are being squeezed. I mean, supply and demand.
They are.
Is it easing or not?
To a degree, and that's seasonal, and it happens every year.
Right.
So every calendar year, the market experiences a fairly aggressive price growth in the rental market through till about Easter. From Easter to spring, it settles down a bit.
Right.
As we know, due to the immigration issue, the rental market is not easy for tenants, but it's not as hard as what it was going back to January and February. But they don't want to overplay their hand by the same token.
Yeah. Great stuff, mate. Good to see you again, Peter.
Thank you, Luke. You too.
Peter O'Malley from Harris Partners.